There's no getting away from it. It's been a long, dark winter for many reasons. But it looks as though there might be a light at the end of the tunnel, and spring is definitely coming. This is the time of year when all good camera guys start to think about, how do we control the brightness of windows? Ta-da! The funny thing about lighting is it's not always about lights. Often it's about making things darker or controlling the balance of the levels of whatever we've got. With a window, we don't want to make it too dark because that can look a bit silly. But then we don't want to battle the brightness of the window just by raising the level of our own lights or getting bigger lights like I have here, because as you can see, that's often a mistake. I once watched somebody lighting an interview in front of a window and they blasted so much light at the victim, their ears went transparent. But apart from raising the level of your lights, there's a few other ways we can control the brightness of windows. And a roll of ND is a common one. I'll often use this if I can't throw the background enough so that the window is sharp in the back of frame. The problem is, and I'm not a fan, it's very shiny. You can see the lights reflected in it. Also it creases, so you can see all the creases. And as you can hear, if the wind catches it at all, it makes a mad amount of noise. Not cheap either. There is another alternative, which is polarizing film. And that works a bit like a variable ND with two filters. The film goes on the window, one lot of filter, and the other one goes in front of the camera lens. And when you twist the camera lens, it makes the window darker, just like a variable ND. The trouble is, it costs an absolute fortune, and it's only really suitable for fixed studio type setups. My preferred option is Black Scrim. This is called Black Scrim 275, and it's made under that number by quite a few different manufacturers. Best thing is it's matte, so it doesn't reflect the lights right back at you, and also it's quiet. It's easy to cut and easy to fit to any size window. So it's really good, but it has three main problems. Firstly, you need to throw your background so that the window is out of focus, because you will see the pattern of this if it's sharp. The other thing is you can't double up on it because it moire patterns. Again, because it's made up of lots of little holes on plastic. The biggest problem is the cost. This is about £125 for a relatively short roll. So I've been looking around for possible alternatives, and I've been collecting suggestions from respected colleagues. So now I'll order a few and we'll get to test them. The first suggestion I saw was for black shark tooth gauze. This looks interesting. It's the sort of stuff they use on stage productions. You can use it as a backdrop, but light it from the back and it goes transparent. Definitely worth a try. It's not clear from the website how wide the roll is. It says sold by the linear metre, but it can't just be 1 metre wide, surely. I'll order 3.6 metres, which should be enough for the window. Guess what? When it turned up, it's 1 metre wide. That's my bad. I should have believed them. Looks promising though. Definitely worth testing. You can see the creases in the fabric when it's not stretched out completely. It's almost like you need to iron it first. But for this size, this actually works out more expensive than the Black Scrim I'm trying to replace. I'll just knock him off the Christmas list. Idiot. The next suggestion I saw was for a soft mesh fabric. I think it's used in dressmaking, but at 3 metres wide, that's a much better price. It's nylon. Ordered in black, I think it's definitely worth trying. So this arrived as ordered, and I like it. The only problem, as you can probably see, is it's very fine. You can barely see it in one layer. You can double it up though, and it doesn't seem to moire pattern too much, probably because it's so fine. And doubled up, it works a little better. It is very sheer. It's made of nylon, a little bit stretchy, but it cuts easily, and I like it. It's definitely worth testing. The next suggestion was for ultrafine insect netting. And that looks good. That's a clever idea. It's sold as 2 metre wide, so I'll get a few metres and add it to the list. Oops. What turned up was white. Did it look as though it was going to be white to you from the website? It's also quite stiff, hard to fold. It's the right density though. Trouble is, it seems to increase the amount of light. I suppose that's what you need for insect netting. Still, it's on the list now. And the final thing I wanted to test was a suggestion of black debris netting. 2 metres by 50 metres for just £30. Wow. This is the sort of stuff on building sites where they wrap a whole building in it. Great value, and it looks like a clever idea. What's turned up is huge. Great value though. And it looks like a genius idea. The weave is quite random, so it shouldn't Murray pattern too much. And you can actually double it up. I'm liking this. What value? As long as you've got a big enough van. Okay, quick update on the debris netting, which I've discovered as I try and cut it to size to match the window. It falls apart. Each time you cut it, the little plastic fibres all split off into individual bits. If you do this indoors, you're just going to cover everywhere in a horrible fire. I couldn't go into somebody's house and start cutting this stuff. It makes such a mess. To summarise the suggestions we've got, Black Scrim 275 works out at about £13.34 per square metre. The shark tooth gauze is shockingly even more expensive at £16.32 per square metre. Mesh fabric turns up at a very reasonable £1 per square metre, and the white insect netting is £2.59 per square metre. And finally, the debris netting is an amazing 24p per square metre. I hope it's good. But the acid test is, how much light do they cut out? Here's Black Scrim on the left, which we'll use as a reference throughout, and clear glass on the right. The camera is about 12 feet away from the window and set at f2.8. It's focused at about 5 feet from the lens. I think a pretty typical interview setup. And as you can see, the Black Scrim cuts out about a stop and a half of light. Let's compare the shark tooth gauze. And it stops almost the same amount of light. If I'm honest, I can see the folds in the fabric though, and it makes the windows look a bit dirty. I could iron it, but why would I if it's more expensive than the Scrim? The mesh fabrics works better than I thought, apart from not cutting out enough light. So let's double the layers. That's not so bad, but only about half the light reduction we get from Scrim 275. So now the insect netting. I don't know why I bothered. It might be good if you need a diffuser effect, but it's actually brighter than having nothing. Well done, whoever suggested that. Finally, the debris netting. It looks clean and it works a little, but what happens if we double that one up? Well, that's not far off, and for the price it's possibly a cheap solution, especially if you have a very large area to cover. I wonder what happens if we go all the way to 3 layers. Well, it stops just about the same amount of light as the Scrim, but we're starting to get the dirty window effect from the pattern. So, looking at all the comparisons on one screen, we can see that the shark tooth gauze and surprisingly the 2 layers of mesh fabric have come closest to stopping the same amount of light as the original Scrim. But if we focus on one window to look at the patterns that all of these fabrics cause, I think it's clear nothing comes close to working as well as the Scrim 275. If I was to pick just one runner-up, I think I like the way the fine mesh fabric works, but only when it's doubled up. Have you heard the phrase, buy cheap, buy twice? I don't think we've come up with any viable alternatives to Black Scrim 275. Unless, of course, you don't mind using the builder's debris netting on the outside of a building and you've got a huge area to ND. Just don't think of using it indoors, you'll be hoovering up forever. Unless, of course, you've got any suggestions. Thanks for watching.